The red centre of Australia certainly has some very impressive white parts, as evidenced by this massive salt lake, Lake Frome, just off the Flinders Ranges here in South Australia. We'll explore Lake Frome and the northern part of the Flinders in this episode of Travel Oz. Hello, I'm Grainger. While exploring the outback of South Australia, we'll encounter Indigenous spear throwers, eerie ghost towns and eccentric bushmen.
Every single letter in the alphabet is a story, and when you can work out the individual letters, you can work out how names are put together.
Back off the mid-Queensland coast, the glorious Whitsunday Islands provide a blissful getaway for our fun-seeking larrikin reporters, the Two Tims. And the Gondwana rainforests of eastern Australia turn on all their charm. Giant trees and waterfalls. Exotic bird life. We're driving from one side of Australia to the other, a marathon road trip that has taken us from Sydney on the east coast to Darwin in the top end. Today we're exploring the northern and older part of the Flinders Ranges, a line of uplifted sedimentary rocks that stretches across much of the eastern side of South Australia. From the northern Flinders property of Arkaroola, I switched to a four-wheel drive for some tougher stretches of road. These tracks run along the ridgetop, with some decidedly steep stretches as Arkaroola's owner, Doug Sprigg, takes me to his favourite lookout. Doug, so what sets this part of the Flinders apart from the rest that we've seen further south?
Okay, the rest of the Flinders Ranges are sedimentary ranges, old seabeds. There's linear features that have rhyme and reason. This is pretty rugged stuff. It's deep crustal granites, the rock that was below those sediments.
And it's old. It's 1.6 billion years old.
Yeah, about double the age of the rest of the Flinders Ranges.
And we're seeing some stunning formations like Silla's Lookout here.
Yeah, it's all pretty good country, I reckon. It's a great backyard.
Doug, the tracks here now take a very interesting route. They run over the ridges, and that's what your tours do. They're ridgetop tours.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, the ridgetop track was built by a company, Exoil, looking for uranium in this area.
Seeing some fascinating vegetation.
Lots of the spinifex, the grass trees, and various hardy eucalypts.
So very hardy territory that we see here. The water holes are drying up. The drought has really hit this area quite hard.
Exactly, yeah. It's, I guess it's not so bad for us. We don't have to live off the land, but certainly the animals are stressed with it.
Down off the cliff tops, Doug drives me east towards the giant salt formation that is Lake Frome. But there's an obstacle ahead, a fence that stretches across the outback that is meant to keep dingoes from infiltrating. So this is the dog fence, but really to keep dingoes out of this part of Australia.
That's right, yeah, keeping them out of the sheep grazing country. So 5,300 kilometres long, there's 2,237 kilometres in South Australia, but only this high.
And so the world's longest fence of its kind.
That's it. It comes all the way through Queensland, down the South Australian border, through this part of South Australia, and ends up down at the Great Australian Bight.
And is it effective?
You notice when we get floods that wash away parts of the fence and the dingoes get through, there's been dingoes get down as far as Port Pirie and cause carnage. Hasn't happened for a few years because we haven't had a rain for a few years, but when it does, we can notice the difference.
You're telling me this property here lost 1/3 of its sheep through dingo attacks?
In 1 year, yeah. Out of 9,000, 3,000 sheep lost in 1 year.
Good reason to close that gate. Ahead, the heat shimmers off Lake Frome, but best now to leave the vehicle and walk onto its surface. So close to Arkaroola, one of the biggest salt lakes in the world.
About 100 kilometres long north-south and 40 kilometres wide down the southern end.
The whiteness is just so glary and it's so consistently white that this is what the scientists use for their spacecraft.
That's right, for calibrating the satellite images.
And this surface just soft enough to break, and this is This is the very environment with all that salt that the saltbush thrives in.
It just, it can get down to the soils just below. It's a fairly thin salt crust here on the edge. Get out further, it's up to about a foot or 30 centimetres thick. But here the salt bush can get through.
And Doug, water, you wouldn't see much water out here, would you?
No, it's been a few years since we've seen much. Get an inch of rain and you've got an inch of water on the lake, but it moves to the lower areas gradually. But big floods, the water comes out of the ranges and lobs on the lake, and then you've got water for months or maybe a year.
How much water have you seen in your lifetime living here?
I've seen it full. 74, where it looked like there were icebergs floating in the, as the salt broke up and came to the surface of the lake, flying over. It was a pretty amazing event that time.
And the lake would be transformed?
It is, definitely. Yeah, totally different.
Back in our van, we're heading east now, out of the Flinders Ranges. Our destination, a ghost town, the ruins of a settlement that once helped open the outback to settlers. Welcome to Farina, or at least what's left of it. It's 130 years now since these stone buildings were erected, and the town flourished as the railhead for many years, with cameleers and explorers setting off from here into the wilderness. Early crops of wheat failed, the rail line was extended, and the town abandoned. Close to Farina is this collection of ramshackle corrugated iron buildings that is home to a very creative man. He's known as Talc Alf, after the sculptures he carves from the soft talc rock found near here.
I was fortunate to work with geologists for about 10 years in Pilbara, West Australia. We found a bit of talc one day, and I started as a hobby carving talc, and it later grew on me, and I thought I'll go to the best talc mine in Australia and settle down and see if I can make a living carving this beautiful stone. And Flinders was the ideal spot.
So how is it to carve talc?
Oh, very easy. It's only hammer and chisel, sandpaper, steel wool. You can cut it with an old bushman saw. It's great stuff to work with. It's solid but very soft.
And tell us about this particular carving.
Yeah, I made it for the truckies of Australia, or the world. And this fella, he's one of the truckies of Flinders. His name was Trevor Dean Callers, and his name was Top Dead Centre. And that's in memory of Top Dead Centre.
You've got a real affinity with the outback?
Yeah, oh great, yeah. Spent 40 years in the outback.
Talc Alf also has his own homegrown theory about the meaning of every single letter in the alphabet.
Every single letter in the alphabet is a story. And when you can work out the individual letters, you can work out how names are put together.
And Alf, what about the word Australia?
Oh, that's a beautiful name, see? And we should all know it because we're living here, and if we're illiterate of our own name, it's not good enough. Now it starts with AU, which is a symbol for gold. So I thought if you're leaving Africa in a sailing boat 2,000 years ago, you're heading towards the golden spirit or sun, S for sun, rise. See, T is the rise. So Ost is actually east. East towards the golden sun, and the Egyptian name for the sun was Ra. That's where the English word rays come from. So Ostra means east toward the golden sun, Ra, where the elder land, like I said with life, is. So the whole name Australis means east toward the golden sun where the land is. It was named 2,000 years ago by the Greek map maker Ptolemy. And then later they took the Matthew Flinders was responsible for that, took the S out and put A there and came up with the word Australia. That's how we got our name.